In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network within the western sector of Pasir Ris. Hey everyone, Transit Evolution is here today to have a look at the cycling network of Pasir Ris, a town which got a head start on this front, but is fast becoming the worst town in Singapore for cycling as a means of last mile travel. You get what I mean throughout this video, and especially in the video for the eastern sector. But after passing a crowded plaza area between Pasir Ris MRT station and the White Sands Mall, I shall exit the town centre using this shared path skirting the periphery of the temporary Pasir Ris bus interchange. The shared path passes through a traffic light that perpetually shows a green man, as I pass a dedicated waiting area out of bounds to the public which is closed today. It is for national servicemen travelling to and from the SAF ferry terminal. This is where I have to cross Pasir Ris Central Street 3, a street built with the sole purpose of facilitating pick-up and drop-off operations for people going to the White Sands Mall. Honestly, the mall seems strangely small for what is supposed to form the entire town centre of Pasir Ris. Anyway, I'm trying to get to the other side of Pasir Ris Central where there is a cycling path, and unfortunately there is no direct crossing from the shared path. This will surely increase the time I require to get out of the town centre. Once I get going though, I find myself travelling on a hardly visible cycling path, passing the housing precinct of Pasir Ris 1. The cycling path kinda splits from the footpath and makes some tight twists and turns as it meanders around the Pasir Ris Central Hawker Centre, the first hawker centre in this town that was built back in 2018. This is located next to the Pasir Ris Sports and Recreation Centre, which opened back in 2011. Which is surprisingly recent for a town that was built in the 1990s. I just want to foreshadow that quality-wise, the cycling paths within Pasir Ris are probably the worst in Singapore at the moment. Part of it is due to the construction of Pasir Ris Mall, an extended east-west line viaduct, and the Cross Island Line station right by its town centre. You can sense that fact as I pass by these construction work sites. For example, this covered walkway lays what is theoretically a cycling path along this stretch of Pasir Ris Drive 3. Because of the state it is in though, its state as a cycling path or not is ambiguous. However it's always best to ride slowly under such hazardous conditions. Here, I cross Pasir Ris Drive 8, passing the Costa Grove precinct that is currently under construction on my right, and amidst the rest of Neighbourhood 5 to my left. We will see cycling paths and footpaths having abrupt lateral shifts now and then here, a pretty common sight in this town. That's partially because the cycling paths here are really old in the history of the island-wide cycling network. This particular path I'm on forms the 1.1 km Phase 1 path, launched in the third quarter of 2011. In many cases, the approach taken to the cycling paths here is to repaint the existing footpath as a cycling path and build a new path closer to the roadway, which serves as the footpath. Not much attention seemed to be paid to the width of each path, and you often either wind up with a cycling path that's not wide enough for cyclists to pass each other, or a footpath that struggles to accommodate wheelchairs. Or you wind up with both. Passing the precinct of Elias View, I have to make do with a temporary path diversion, something which you will see a lot in the town seeing plenty of infrastructural works at the moment. How they are implemented wildly differs between the various construction sites in this town. This is where I pass Pasir Ris Elias Community Centre and the Elias Mall, which forms the centre of Neighbourhood 6. It is a little difficult to see how this cycling path passes this bus stop. Now if you are thinking, gee, this guy is very whiny about the state of cycling paths here, then you better be prepared for what is to come, because the paths ahead are even worse. Crossing Elias Road, I leave the familiar grey paths built by the LTA for something which looks bizarrely elaborate given the number of bricks serving as retaining walls, and yet it's not very good. As it turns out, this is a cycle track built by the Pasir Ris Town Council as part of a Pasir Ris 21 Community Mall project which was constructed sometime between 2001 and 2005. The path had to route away from the tiniest possible obstacles, like trees, making it a pain to use. We'll see more examples of this in a short while, but first I return on a more typical cycling path as I pass the former campus of Siglap Secondary School, before it merged with Coral Secondary to form Meridian Secondary School in 2017. I make a left turn around Pasir Ris Drive 10 and briefly travel on a Phase 2 cycling path built under contract RP228E, awarded in 2013 and only eventually completed in 2015. This path is slightly better, but it still isn't very good, as it assumes that pedestrians are capable of teleporting through obstacles, like lampposts and grass. But even this would feel like a paradise once we get back on the town council path. Here it comes. After 2 decades of neglect, it's a shame to see what this path has become. The ride on it is an extremely painful affair. 12 horizontal yellow strips jut prominently out of the cycling path, causing vibrations that are so intense my GoPro would get dislodged from the bicycle if I'm not holding tightly on it. Every time I cross a conflict point, we get another 12 more bumps again. Moreover, after 2 decades of neglect, the once pristine asphalt has degraded to be full of moss, algae, mold, and potholes. The cycling path also merges with the footpath at the smallest of obstacles, like the staircase over here, rendering it pretty useless. This cycling path is undeserving of being counted as part of the 1,300 kilometers target by 2030, and I hope to see it rebuilt very soon. The cycling path continues south of Pasir Ris Drive 1 along the other side of Pasir Ris Drive 10. It goes up an upslope and uses public housing land instead of the road reserve, and it comes with bollards at this point where I pass a bus stop. The number of elevation and directional changes that I have to make to travel on such a short stretch of cycling path is insane compared to the relative flatness of the roadway, and I'm just glad that we don't build paths like this nowadays. I shall now rewind onto Pasir Ris Drive 10, where I make an informal crossing to get to the cycling path along Pasir Ris Street 72. I will have to make an informal crossing across the 4-lane roadway here, since the junction between the two roads is not controlled for some reason. Once again, this path was built in the early 2000s, and you can see that it imposes plenty of impediments to cyclists, making it not very well used. I suppose this is supposed to form part of the community mall that is supposed to span across the length of Pasir Ris, under the Pasir Ris 21 initiative, dating back to 1996. This is supposed to be a corridor where residents meet and interact, but I suppose that isn't happening here. The worst part about all this is that as I reach the western end of Pasir Ris Street 72, the cycling path ends, and the footpath connects to an access road in the housing precinct to my right, without any curb cuts continuing along the street. This is very unusual. It means that I have no choice but to dismount and push on what is supposed to be biking infrastructure. Granted, the cycling path was built back in the day when cycling was banned on footpaths. You have to dismount and push every time you cross a side road. But that's no longer the case since the mid-2010s, and the infrastructure has not adapted to have curb cuts at the very minimum to allow a barrier-free way to cross the road. This sort of impediments to cyclists and wheelchair users isn't something that you see in other towns without cycling paths, let alone cycling towns. It sure is disappointing that paths like this exist along quite a few streets in Pasir Ris. Moving on, I just made a loop to avoid entering the Lorong Halus Park connector as I now cover the cycling path on the west side of Pasir Ris Drive 12. Nothing much noteworthy here, other than the fact that the footpath is noticeably wider to accommodate a canal leading to Serangoon Harbour, as I travel along a pavement adjacent to the Pasir Ris Wafer Fabrication Park. I shall now start my journey along Pasir Ris Drive 1, the main east-west transportation axis in Pasir Ris, south of Pasir Ris Drive 3. Let's see how well it holds up for cycling. Well, not very. Already as I pass Pasir Ris West Plaza, the neighbourhood centre for Neighbourhood 7, they seem to have given up on building a cycling path here. Well, the town council attempted to build a cycling path here. It's just that it's on top of the slope to my left. It will rapidly descend to the level of this cycling path, ending at 2 bollards. I'm sure this is a safe design for cyclists. While I will not feature that particularly dodgy path in this video, perhaps it will appear in yet another short form video. Anyway, I am now heading back towards the town centre along Pasir Ris Drive 1, along a path built under Phase 2 of the network in this town. Pasir Ris Drive 1 is the main transportation axis between the town centre and the various neighbourhoods of this town, so how it's designed has a significant effect on the intra-town cycling experience here. While it's not as bad as some of the early town council paths, it's still not very ideal, as I have to meander through bus stops and narrow sheltered walkways much of the time. Passing Parkview Primary School, I find myself on an access road to an adjacent precinct in Neighbourhood 6, where I have to briefly move up and down. I'm not sure how this could be easily rectified without rebuilding the entire driveway, but the presence of such elevation changes goes to show that Pasir Ris is not a flat town. As I approach the intersection of Elias Road, I find myself having to pedal hard as the roadway goes on an upslope away from this intersection. This influences the geometry of the pavements here. I suppose I want to talk a little about the history of the western part of Pasir Ris New Town, which mainly came after the east side of it was built and was completed between 1993 and 1996. There were plenty of differences between blocks built during this period and those that came earlier in the east in Neighbourhood 4. For one, centralized refuse chutes were introduced into high-rise blocks in 1989 as a substitute for dustbin compounds. Multi-story car parks began appearing in precincts starting around 1990, leaving more open space for landscaping purposes. Also, the housing blocks come in more varied forms now. No longer are they all slab or point blocks. A new type of block design, the atrium block featuring courtyards, began to proliferate here. Units are also placed with their windows facing towards the road, instead of corridors. Facade designs and color vary between each block, while motifs are often incorporated into the block design, resulting in a more interesting built environment. Passing 571 Pasir Ris Street 53, the pathway gets temporarily diverted due to ongoing construction works for the Pasir Ris station of the Cross Island Line. Such works have caused a significant change in the landscape for cycling, and they will likely change rather rapidly over time, so this video may be outdated by the time you are watching it. Regardless, I will still be showing the paths here, as they aim to show how seriously cycling is accommodated as a mode of travel under construction conditions. Once again, I find myself on a very crooked cycling path along Pasir Ris Street 53. Bizarrely enough, benches are laid along the way, enticing people to walk on the cycling path to have a seat. These cycling paths were sited extremely far away from the road within public housing land. It probably arises because the Land Transport Authority wasn't keen on building bicycle lanes along the roadway in any shape or form back then, despite petitions from the residents in 1996. Hence, this grassroots attempt from the town council to build cycle tracks shouldn't be surprising, because as early as 1994, it was reported that cyclists can be found throughout the town, from the neighborhood shops to the market, from the McDonald's to the town park. Pasir Ris already had a bicycle culture, and all these happened despite a lack of bicycle facilities. However, the town council winded up with a pretty discontinuous network, and I will have to travel on footpaths along Pasir Ris Street 52. There's a mid-block bicycle crossing here along Pasir Ris Drive 3, next to the future Costa Grove precinct. I'll be using it briefly to get to a cycling path segment further west, one of the newer additions to this town. As an alternative, I could cycle under this bridge on the pathways parallel to Sungai Api-Api, which will enable me to avoid making this at-grade crossing. But it's a little cramped down there, so I decided to use the bicycle crossing instead. This short shed path goes along the landed housing estate of Riverina, and it doesn't last for long, coming to an end at yet another bicycle crossing outside the Stratum condo. It may not make sense now, but surely when the cycling network here gets iteratively expanded, such idiosyncrasies will become less common here. I'm now travelling along Elias Road, named after some Jewish merchants from the colonial days. Unlike much of the street network in Pasir Ris, Elias Road predates the New Town. It has always existed and once connected Tampines Road with Kampong Pasir Ris and other Kampong Baru and various Chinese villages. It also leads to Pasir Ris Beach, which already in the 1950s was a popular beach resort for water skiing, with a hotel and a good beach for swimming and picnics. Because of its historical nature though, it is very hilly. There's an upward incline as you move southwards until you approach Pasir Ris Drive 1, where there's a steep downward slope to watch out for. The last access road I'm travelling along here is Pasir Ris Grove, where we see a red cycling path, probably the newest such path built in this town. This street is 440 meters long, but it has to serve 5 different condominiums. Cocoa Palms to my left, and from west to east, Livia, NV Residences, The Palette, and The Nest to my right. That's quite a lot of developments for not a lot of road length, and unfortunately, this results in this street having a stroady nature. Many side roads where vehicles have to turn in and out of various developments, cutting across the cycling and footpath. You have seen how I have to stop quite a few times to let vehicles turn in and out at informal crossings, since cars are prioritized here. This adversely affects the cycling experience amidst these gated communities, but I guess at least the cycling path is pretty smooth. Vehicular traffic along Pasir Ris Drive 8 is high in volume and fast in speed, being one of the 4 road links between Pasir Ris and the Tampines Expressway. This makes for an unpleasant journey outside of a car around here. And of course, all the trees have to be chopped down to divert traffic around the construction sites of the Cross Island Line. On this hot and sunny day, the journey amidst this dizzying array of barricades is not pleasant. Some of these inconveniences are inevitable given the site constraints of this area, so hopefully in coming years, this will get better. We will briefly see a bit of the cycling path along Pasir Ris Drive 8. I hope to not sound like a broken record, but it's worth pointing out that the pillars of this covered walkway are built within the clear width of the footpath. This is usually a problem for pedestrians, as it makes it hard for them to pass around one another without walking into the cycling path. But when the cycling path is so invisible and faded, it probably doesn't make a difference at all. Anyway, at this point, I'm moving back towards the town centre of Pasir Ris. Honestly, I'm stumped. It's hard to try and describe the pros and cons of this area when the cycling path network is so patchwork in nature, built in 2 very different eras of time when cycling wasn't taken seriously as a mode of travel. It is so bad that I don't see a way to modify it to be better. They'll have to bulldoze it all and start from scratch to build something actually usable for cyclists. The only thing good that came out of Pasir Ris is that the town council here, back in the early 2000s, were the trailblazers, the cycling town which started it all because some youths here had a vision of travel away from motorized vehicles, long before the authorities did. Anyway, pardon me as I minder around the construction barricades surrounding the future Pasir Ris Mall, which will house an integrated transport hub, a euphemism for an air-conditioned bus interchange integrated into a shopping mall, with the Pasir Ris 8 private condominium on top. Yet another modern take of the podium tower building typology, which contrasts favourably from the atrium blocks all around. For the last cycling path of today, I will just briefly travel along the periphery of Pasir Ris 1 housing precinct, before I draw this video to a close at Pasir Ris MRT station. It will not be long before I approach the end of this episode of Cycling Tours. Feel free to talk about your opinions of the cycling network here in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you have not done so. And if you are willing, kindly support me using the super thanks function of YouTube. This is Transit Evolution signing off.